Welcome to Mindful Live number 64. Yes, Mindful Live 64. It is Wednesday, the 6th of April. Wow, yes, the 6th of April. The 6th of the 4th month. And it's Mindful Live number 64. We're moving well along. 64 is actually quite a bit, you know. When you think about that, I've been doing this. I've had some experience now. We can say we are veterans in this live business. Me, the speaker, you, the viewer. Thank you for joining me. I am Nathan Springer, your host for Mindful Live, where we sit and talk about generally the current affairs that affect people in and around Trinidad and Tobago, because that's where I am located, the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you are over on the live on TikTok, or if you are over on the live on Instagram, be sure to hit that like button. Or if you are over on the live on YouTube also, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button too. And if you are over on TikTok or Instagram and you ever missed a live and you're wondering, what are these previous lives about? Feel free, go over to YouTube, subscribe to Nathan Springer on YouTube, and you'll see all of the other content there. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. So what we're talking about today, at least what we're starting talking about today, has to do with what I did my contemplation over on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, etc. about today. It's about the Prime Minister's response. So in case you didn't know, let's get a quick refresher and come up to pace. The opposition leader has a whistleblower. The whistleblower has revealed to the opposition leader that there's spying going on. And I believe that the whistleblower highlighted that it is being done by the Pegasus software out of Israel. And as I said yesterday, that Israeli spying software named Pegasus business is actually real. That does exist and it can spy. And someone was noting last night that they said Apple, the iPhones, have patched and removed the capability of Pegasus to get into their software. But I was looking at an article, I believe from last week, where Apple sued the NSO, which is the parent company that creates this Pegasus software. They sued them. And up till somewhere last week, someone found Pegasus on an iPhone. So, as I said, it's kind of a race. It's kind of a continuous race. One upgrades their system, the other upgrades their ability to hack into the system. So, yes, the capability is out there. The technology is out there. But, according to the opposition leader, she says that spying is going on from captain to cook to janitor to mouse to mosquito to cockroach in the corner. Everybody is being spied on in Trinidad and Tobago right now, according to the whistleblower from the opposition leader. She says government ministers. Now, I found some of this difficult to believe because the PNM is such a kind of institutional party. I find it hard to believe that one person, and I suppose she means Dr. Keith Rowley, the current leader of the PNM and our current Prime Minister. I suppose she's trying to insinuate that that one man took over the entire PNM and somehow now he has the reins of the secret agencies in the country and is using them as his own private agencies. That's kind of the implication that is being given, and I find that kind of hard to believe. I find that kind of hard to believe. I don't know if Dr. Rowley would be able to find enough PNM loyalists that would be loyal to him in particular and keep their loyalty only to him in so much that they would spy on other PNM officials. That's a hard one to believe. And I think if that indeed was happening, that would be signs of a splinter within that PNM party. And I'm not sure I'm seeing those signs quite yet. So that's that on that. But the Prime Minister responded. The Prime Minister had a response for all of this. As I think of it, spying is just a professional way of saying minding one's business. Yes, spying is professional macroing, basically. So, the Prime Minister had a response for all of this. Of course he did. Now, we are getting into the real high point of the political fray right now because elections are around the corner. Good night, all the opposition leader trying old tactics. We'll get into the old tactics part because I pulled up some juicy stories about what happened back then. Last night we were just, browsing over some of it. But I read over. All right, let's get into the news. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, PM to Kamala, spyware is for the criminal elements. Of course. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has rubbished claims by the opposition United National Congress that the government has been spying on citizens. Speaking at the People's National Movement political meeting at Diego Martin South Community Center. Okay, but let me read something over from the YouTube stream. I know some of you feel left out over on YouTube. Quinn Trim says, what up? Is the stream started? Mindful, I'm running a stream and talking to you, but I'm always glad to be here. Grateful for your thoughts. But I run my business, which is what I do, which is electrical and looking at crypto. Nice! But hacking is not hard here in Trinidad. Both governments doing it, PNM and UNC. That's the truth. The whole spying business was not one government. It was going across the board. But again, to you over on YouTube, if you wonder sometimes, if you find like I'm not reading your comments up to date, well, here's the thing. YouTube's serious about their pulling you from a live stream business. The reason YouTube could cut your stream, if I say something that YouTube does not like, they could cut my stream midstream. And the people listening live will not even hear what I said. You wonder how it's done? Well, the YouTube streams aren't actually live. They're like on a 1, 2, 3 minute delay, a little delay, not extremely long, but a slight delay. So they can actually process all that you're saying before, and they could hit you the chop before. But yes, if you see me replying a little delayed sometimes to your comments over on YouTube, that might be why. When someone tracking your phone, is that spying? Well, it's all according to your definition of spying, I guess. But tracking your phone without your consent, I guess, would be considered spying. The Prime Minister admitted that software had been purchased for use by the Strategic Services Agency, but it was being used to monitor the activities of criminals and not law-abiding citizens. Listen. I understand this, but I think this is an extremely slippery slope. If you are monitoring the phone of, let's say, a gang leader, and the gang leader calls his sister, won't you monitor the phone of his sister too? And then next thing, the sister is going to call someone else. And you're saying, well, you know, next thing, just in case the sister is going to release her, then you monitor her. Listen, if you're talking about monitoring people for the criminal elements not to get a hold on Trinidad and Tobago, then you can legitimately use that excuse to monitor everyone in the island. I could see that excuse being used for everything. Everyone in the island at some point in time could be monitored, and the excuse could be used that, you know, you're making sure that criminal activity isn't going on. So I understand what they're saying, but I like when you're talking about spying, ever read the Intercept Law? Yes, I did actually. I did. I can't remember how long ago that was, but I did actually read that law. The thing is, I would like to see those safeguards actually put into place. And when an agency is by nature secretive, it's very difficult to even know if the safeguards are being put into place. It's very difficult. So, for example, in the United States, and as I regularly say, I like to use the United States as an example. One, because many people in Trinidad and Tobago like to use them as a positive example. Like, that don't happen in America, you know. If that was America, that would have never happened. So I like to use their literal examples to show that, yeah, some of these things are just as insane over there. And they have good records of, it's as it were a beautiful social experiment running over there to the west of us that we can see recorded in pretty high detail. So, yeah. Yeah, see the ghetto. The ghetto, yeah. There was some spying that went on. For example, in the previous administration under their last president, their secret agencies spied on that president. And they spied on him actually more for political reasons. But they used a special warrant that was obtained for the purpose of spying on people that they presume may be working for the foreign enemies. And here's what they did. So one person working inside of the Trump campaign worked for the CIA as an informant inside of Russia. You understanding that? They worked for the CIA. So the CIA knew that, was it the CIA or the FBI? So they knew that this person worked with the Russians. They took that information that this person was working with Russians and known to be working with Russians, and they carried that to something called the FISA courts. That's basically to get a spy warrant. They went to get a spy warrant. They used that knowledge of the person they knew worked for them, for Russia, to say that we know someone inside of Trump's campaign that worked for Russia. So let's get a warrant, just to investigate that person. And then they used that warrant to tap the entirety of Donald Trump's campaign for election. And then use that tap to release some of that information to the news to make him look bad. Then they used some of that knowledge to arrest some of the people inside of his campaign for technicalities. For example, one of the main people they arrested was on a law that has never been used since the 1800s. But when they know everything you say over all of your communication, listen, anyone who is familiar with the law books can attest to the fact that at nearly any given moment, you're almost always breaking some amount of laws. So if someone has access to all of your information, listen, blackmail and cornering you into doing what they like you to do or what they want you to do would become very easy. It would become very easy. So the abuse of the process in spying is a notorious thing. This same Pegasus software, I don't know how many of you would know the name Jamal Khashoggi or Khashoggi or however they pronounce it. Khashoggi, he was a Washington Post reporter that was killed and dismembered, was it in Turkey, by the Saudi Arabians, by the Saudis. He was a Saudi that worked for the Washington Post and reported critically on the Saudi royal family. They messaged him some kind of tie-up message, got him out there in Europe, and you actually have footage of them kidnapping the man, and eventually they dismembered him, killed him, and passed him all about the place. How they found him, how they tricked him into meeting them, was through the same Pegasus software. So again, it's not to say that the threat of this software isn't real, that the threat from a government spying isn't real. That is something very real, and it's a threat not to be taken lightly. Right? So I will give credence to that part of what the opposition leader is bringing up. Oh, let's see what the chat is saying. But can't be legally acted upon because of the person. All devices, all right. I don't think it's that easy. It's not that easy. All devices are not being spied upon. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think Trinidad has the capability to do that. Now, they speak about that from the NSA. I think the NSA might be spying on all devices, and that's because it's not a person actually looking at it. There are algorithms and programs running on this, looking for keywords. So if you're on the phone and you mention bomb, 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 it just probably links, probably me saying that probably just ticked something off in an NSA something, and someone came to the computer just to make sure that that guy with the beard down in Trinidad, that he's still minding his own business and talking about Trinidad politics. And yes, Mr. FBI sir, I'm minding my business. We're talking about Miss Kamala Prasad, not Kamala. We're minding our business over here, Mr. FBI sir. All right, that happening long time since the PM of the PNM. I know what you're saying. Yes, it is happening long time. All right. Last night, the Prime Minister hit back, saying Monday was not the first time Prasad Bisasa had accused the PNM of spying on her. All of a sudden, Trinidad and Tobago is North Korea. And why she do that? This is not the first time. I want to remind Trinidad and Tobago that was the opposition of it. There was a prime ministerial version of that when she came into office in 2010. One of the first things she did was to destroy the security systems of this country by claiming she was being spied on. That is kind of true. We're going to get back to that allegation right before we deal with the Prime Minister making a statement that annoyed me. He went on at some point in his speech to point out that now he went on and the allegations always surface about the corruption, especially inside of the opposition party, and that a lot of the times when they are hedging about criminality, etc., they are trying to block their own criminal friends, right? We know how those allegations go. But with that similar tone, the Prime Minister made this statement that if you have nothing to fear, if you are a legal, law-abiding citizen, you do not have that kind of problem. Only criminals have that kind of problem. Let's go through that whole speech. So why does she come here and tell the country that if the SSA has the equipment to be able to be on the ball like every other country in being able to have information to protect the state, why does she come and lie to the country and say it is the government doing that and doing that to come and spy on everybody? What the hell are you doing that you don't want the government to know? If you are a legal, law-abiding citizen, you don't have that kind of problem. Yes, Mr. Prime Minister, I do have that kind of problem. I am not doing anything illegal, I think, but I don't want you to know all of my business. Like, and as I said in the contemplation, the primary thing with this, and this goes back even to the arguments they were making against bail. The primary thing about this is our legal judicial system is built upon the presumption of innocence. We went through this before. Blackstone's formula. It's better that 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person is punished. That's what our system is built on, that principle. You are innocent until proven guilty. By you spying on people and then saying, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about, you are basically saying that, well, we'll spy on you, and it's only if you are guilty, that presumption of guilt, then you have that to worry about. That's not how our system works. I am innocent until proven guilty. You have to prove that you have something to look for before you come looking in my business. Think, yes, PNM does love big government, and our dear friend Mia over in Barbados loves the same thing, and a lot of people love her. I do not like that big government business. I do not like it at all. But yes, you must think about your data, about what is your data and your privacy as your property. And when we're online now, this is something that you need to consider more and more. You need to have the right conceptualization of this. Your data is your property. Consider it as such. So, does the government have the right to go pilfering through your property without your consent? The only way the government has that right is if through the legal process, if through, what do you call that legal process again? I forgot the technical term. But if through the legal process, they go through that, and then that legal process says, okay, well, now we see enough evidence that this person may be involved in wrongdoing, then we can, you know what? We'll write an official document that says, all right, we can cut this person's right to privacy just for this small instance in this small area. That's how it's done. That's how it's done, because I have a presumption of innocence. You cannot just come in and pilfer through my property and then so it's like I come home someday and I see Dr. Rowley looking under my mattress and flopping through my bed sheet and going through my chest drawer and on top of my cabinet opening my perfume bottles and taking a sniff. And I see him in my room. And then I like, hey, Kit, bro, what you doing in here? And he like, well, Nathan, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. We might fight. I mean, he is a pensioner. We wouldn't fight. I'm not going to get into that physical business. But what are you doing in here? But what are you doing in here? What are you doing in here? They all say the same thing, but that is what the law for intercept states. That is what the law for intercept states, but that's not what the Prime Minister was speaking about there. And if the law for intercept can allow for you to have a warrant drawn up for you to be spied on without your knowledge, they don't have to tell you. It's a one-way business. I forgot the legal name for that. It's a one-way business. They don't have to tell you anything, and they're spying on you. Listen, I find something like that. The warrant for that has to be the need for evidence, the limit for evidence in order for you to get a warrant for something like that, I think needs to be very high. And when you're talking about something that is secretive, as this is, we don't know. So we have to depend on you that you're doing the right thing. And to me, if your mentality is that if you are a law-abiding citizen, you have nothing to worry about, then I do not trust you, because that's not the kind of thinking I want for someone who has the capability to spy on anyone in the country. That's not the kind of thinking I want. I want you to say something like, we don't spy on anyone just like that. There's a strong legal process, and it's only through that legal process that any kind of surveillance can go on. That's the kind of answer I'm looking for. Over on YouTube, yo Schizo, Anthony Vidal, welcome in. Digital and Be Mobile compromised long time, but for the big boys and their families, but make it for the small man too. When citizens need help them. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Be Mobile and Digital, if asked, will give up all your information. But the thing is, the reason they need additional software for this is that times are changing. People don't text all their business over Digicel and Be Mobile. I suppose they thrive in the ambiguity. Very true, Massimo. Very true. But people don't send all their information over Be Mobile and Digicel. You got Instagram DMs, you got WhatsApp, which has end-to-end encryption. The people over at WhatsApp don't even know what you're sending there. And I'm not sure how much direct control Digicel or Be Mobile would have over, for example, the iMessages that might go from iPhone to iPhone. So some of this requires some of that spy software. And the thing is, as I was saying last night, the reason Pegasus works even with WhatsApp, though WhatsApp has encryption end-to-end, what happens is Pegasus is on the end. They're there on the end after it's decrypted. So they got the decrypted version from your phone, and they could just send that to whoever has the control. How we stated it was off, but how you saying it is how it is. How I'm saying it is how they always say that it is. Listen, the NSA said that that's how it was before Snowden came out and bust their files. Everyone says it's that way. But here's the thing. The very argument that leads you into surveillance, I think, the logic that leads you into surveilling people is one that really doesn't end. It doesn't end until you have a full surveillance state. If you're looking for security by knowing what is happening in people's private lives, then you need to know what is happening in everyone's private life. That's just the nature of it. And then when the reality is that there are political operatives in and around this business, you get very scary. Because now, if I am out here and I think I want to join politics, now I have to be very frightened about what messages I send. I have to be very frightened because there are political operatives in there who may be willing to use my messages for their political ends. Good night, easy. Good night, interesting. What's happening? What about kidnapping? If Digicel and BMY can't help in that. You should watch The Wire. It deals with wiretaps, intercepts, and getting warrants to do surveillance. I think I did watch pieces of The Wire. In such ambiguity, the most amount of power and the least amount of responsibility for the abuses of that power, since every act they so please can be legally justified. I agree, Massimo, at least with minimal and abstract disjointed evidence. Massimo, you're speaking the things over there on Instagram. You're preaching over there. But to get back to the statement he said, where the opposition leader, when she was in governance, dismantled the Trinidad Security Agency. What is the Prime Minister talking about with that? Well, let's go back to an article from 2015 in Wired 868. Public interest in private lives. Rishmi, Kamla, Jack, and sex in the media. Listen. How much does Pegasus cost? I don't know, Mr. Khan, and I find that question they should investigate. From the time you're asking that question, you raising questions on yourself. Why you want to know how much Pegasus costs? I'm sure it costs a lot. You know something strange? You know Israel banned NSO, which is the company that creates Pegasus, from being able to sell the product to Ukraine so that it wouldn't get involved in that whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. Yeah. Interesting stuff in the news. Anyway, as I will say as I'm reading this article, I did not write this article. I did not write this article. I am just reading it as I see it. An article from Ms. Sheila Rampersad on Friday the 28th of August 2015. That's after the People's Partnership lost the election already, I believe. Public interest in private lives. Rishmi, Kamla, Jack, and sex in the media. Less than 8 months after Kamla Prasad and the People's Partnership skillfully navigated the crest of a high wave in a sea of yellow and assumed governance of a nation, the name Rishmi Ramnarine entered the national vocabulary. The PP government was elected on May 24th, 2010. News of Ramnarine's appointment as director of the Security Intelligence Agency was published in January 2011. Neither the head of the National Security Council nor the newly appointed boss of spies saw what was coming their way, which incidentally ought to have immediately disqualified both Prasad Bisesa and Ramnarine from their respective new jobs and from anything that involved intelligence gathering and reading public perception. In 2010, Ramnarine suffered the brunt of criticisms over her appointment. She had entered the security agency as a junior technician, earning a monthly salary of $5,000. There was general confusion about her academic qualifications. Her academic qualifications apparently didn't line up with what they expected. Then National Security Minister John Sandy, in attempting to justify Ramnarine's appointment, said in Parliament that she was a graduate of the university, which actually wasn't true, I think, back then. Good night, Krimak. There was no doubt, however, that whatever academic qualifications Ramnarine possessed were less than suitable to qualify her even as a candidate for the post of director of the country's premier intelligence gathering agency. Ramnarine was favored to replace Nigel Clement, who, SSA Deputy Director Julie Brown wrote, was in possession of 5 O-levels with grade B's and C's. So she replaced the former director. Now, here's the thing that I find strange with this. Okay, the former director back in 2010 of the SSE was one Mr. Nigel Clement that was removed once the partnership got into governance. Now, here's something that's just interesting for me. Just interesting. An article I saw today, opposition leader, why has a junior officer been allowed access to law-abiding citizens' private messages? Opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesa is calling on the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, to explain the role of a junior officer in the interception of communications between law-abiding citizens. In a press release issued this afternoon, the opposition leader stated that illegal accessing and storage of emails and text messages are occurring. She called on Minister Hines to state what is the role of Constable Clement in the interception of communications. Now, I don't know if there's a similarity between the persons, if it's the same person, if it's a relative, but I find it just a strange coincidence that this surname Clement is being brought up by the opposition leader in association with the same spying business, when the former director of the SSE, who she removed back in 2010, was one Nigel Clement. I don't know if it's the same person, but I just find that interesting. Now, what happened at the SIA was when Ms. Prasad Bisesa, and you could read through the article to find some more of the sordid details. what happened at the SIA was when Ms. Prasad Bisesa got into power, she alleged that the SIA and the SSE were both spying on her and spying on a lot of the citizens of the country. And she brought this to light because the country, for many people back in 2010, even the reality that the SIA and the SSE were institutions that existed in Trinidad and Tobago was news to a lot of people. But here's the strange thing in that. Both of those institutions had existed for quite some time now. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa was the Attorney General between 1995 to 2001. Surely, as member of the National Security Council back then, she was very much aware of the existence of the SSE and the SIA. And there were allegations back then under the Pandey government that there were different heads at different times between the SIA and the SSE that were kind of working against each other. So they were very much aware of the existence of those two agencies. So for Ms. Prasad Bisesa in 2010 to come in and pretend nearly like she never knew these agencies existed, you know, this was all news. This was all news. And then, because she had to have, you know, we have to get this thing under proper control, she fired the former head of that agency and hired an unqualified person. Now, part of the allegations were that some of the information that came out of the SSE may have come out because of that person that she was giving favor to. And it's kind of unfortunate, really and truly, when you think that the main intelligence gathering agency in the country was dismantled within the first year of the partnership government. And to me, that does want to bring some credence to some of the allegations, like, as Trinise put it, like someone was making track for Guti to run. Because that little suspect. Let me be honest, that is a little suspect. Now, 4 years later, when this article was being written, and 7 months since the original outrage, former right-hand man and current accused Jack Warner has proffered to the public an explanation for what really happened. And the explanation involves national politics, the politics of vengeance, and sexual politics. Warner claimed last week that Ramnarayan and several others were rewarded with high-profile positions paid for by the state because of romantic and sexual relations with the Prime Minister. Further, he alleges that the Prime Minister, the ultimate leader in the Westminster system, preyed on young women, and there is a sworn affidavit saying so. The Prime Minister said she referred the matter to her lawyers. Again, I didn't say this. The article is saying this as quoted from Mr. Warner back then. That's some heavy allegations. But if our security agencies were being played with as a tool of someone's desires, someone's base desires, so I think Mrs. Prasad Bisesa really, although, as I said before, the allegations about spying and all of that, I understand fully. And I'm worried about that too. I think Miss Prasad Bisesa needs to, you know, make sure that she's inside of her crease. She needs to make sure that she's inside of her crease, holding on strong to that batting inside of her crease, because some of the allegations floating out there as pertaining to that same kind of spying business, well, let's just say that she might not be the one that really wants to bring some of that to the fore. You know, the whole glass houses At that point, it was simply inconvenient to her goals, not necessarily because of its innate dangers to the free and private lifestyles of the general public. That's my guess. Yeah. The retirement age for politicians need to be set. 65 sounds fair. I understand that. I could agree. But here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that politicians getting old is automatically a sign that they are worse. I don't think that young people are automatically going to do better. And I would like that if there is a 75-year-old man that I think would best run my country, I would prefer to vote for him, to be quite honest. I don't know if an age limit would solve what we're hoping to solve. I don't actually think an age limit would solve what we're hoping to solve. We should not be talking about Kamala as a continued leader. The problem with that isn't about her age. The problem with that is about the structure of politics inside of her party. There is supposed to be a method for that not to exist. A failing politician is supposed to lose their internal government elections. But unfortunately, the UNC party has become so leader-oriented that this lady could lose every single national election. And inside of her party, that core that votes for her would always do it. And she cannot lose an internal election. That is not the fault of an age limit. That's the fault of UNC party politics. They need to fix their party politics. No way was this person supposed to be voted back in leader. When Mr. Manning, who could have been one of the most endeared leaders of the PNM back in 2010, when he did their internal election, he lost. They nearly beat him out of Balize House. I believe that most people at certain ages can't function in a current, far less a future society. I don't know if I believe that. That's ageism, Maria. That right there is ageism. That's what that is. I don't necessarily believe that old people cannot function. The fact is, many of the companies are ruled by old people anyway. And a lot of the old people have a lot of the vested interest in the country. Some of them have the most to lose. And the thing is, yes, they are old and they may not live to see much more. But if you have people with the right mindset, you'd be hoping that old people, I don't know if you ever heard this statement that great nations, great countries, great civilizations, etc., great societies are built by old men who plant trees that they would not live to sit in the shade of. They would not live to sit in the shade of the trees that they have planted. And that's the kind of great society plan. And I don't necessarily think that in order for that to happen, you need to get rid of the old people. I don't necessarily think that's true. Devant Mirage had an excellent critique on the UNC after election. He was maligned by the party. Yeah. They are owned by older folks, but there are several persons that contribute to their decision making, COO, CEO, CFO, etc. But in politics, the caps come out. But in politics, listen, in politics, to be very fair, I could kind of be worried about the young people more, to be very honest with you. I kind of could be worried about some young people more, because the problem is that many young people are too willing to go about jumping into new ideas. That's my problem. That right there is my problem. They are too rash with the new. And here's the thing, I don't mind change. But there are usually much more ways for things to fail than for them to succeed. That's very subjective. But here's the thing. If we're looking at statistical information, if we're looking at brain data, as Rooney likes to say, I should have a plaque here saying there's a biological reason for that. Brain data, the actual brain makeup. Young people's brains literally are more open. Young people's brains are more open to new experiences than older people's. And the problem is that many of these new experiences, if implemented on a national scale, would crash the country. Here's the thing that I would like. I would like that young people have the freedom to experiment with their new experiences under the safety of a government and a structure controlled by older heads who understand that just randomly and willy willy-nilly changing things could result in disaster in swift time. And then, as these young people experiment with their changes, experiment with what works and what doesn't work, when eventually they reach to the stage where their minds are a little more stable and they are able to hold on to concepts for a longer period of time, and they're not just willing to vote for change because voting for change is the good thing. Listen, I hate that idea. Any politician who comes in, vote for change, I am already skeptical of you. Change for what? Change why? Change to what? Who says change is going to be better? Just automatically change. And it's almost always an appeal to the young, because the young almost always have that rebellious, that teenage rebellion that is still living in our minds. When you're still young, you have that rebellious spirit. So when someone tells you about change and, hey, don't listen to what the parents did, let's go different from what the parents did, they don't understand the future. They don't understand where this world is going to be. We need change and we need to do things our way. And then they fool you into some kind of socialism nonsense, and the society crashes in soon time. It has happened regularly over the history of mankind. Very regularly. That's why most stable societies have a group of elders. It's not just about they hate young people. That is why Trinbago politics is the way it is. No, it's not. No, it is not actually. That's not how Trinbago politics functions. Trinbago politics doesn't function by just the old people doing what the old people want, and that's why Trinbago politics is the way it is. Go look at many of the youngest people in the UNC. Go look at Khadija Amin. Go look at Mr. Saddam Hussein, and tell me if their flavor of politics is any different from the older heads. That's not the way it happens. It's not just about the young. It's not like if we get a young party, all of a sudden the country is going to be better. This is how we get the change up. This is how we get the change up and the chain up. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. If you look at countries that function the best, look at Germany. When Germany was in the height of their advancement for the last few years, it's because they had one person who was of an older age, Miss Merkel. She was in charge for a long period of time. If you just took some 20-year-old and threw them into leadership into Germany, do you think Germany would have been the world power it was now as compared to Miss Angela Merkel if she ruled for that period of time? Who vote Nathan? Everyone over 18. Now, here's even a controversial opinion that I might have. I might be okay with raising the voting age. I'm even serious about that. I might be okay with it. I might be okay with it. I just letting you all know. It might. Who is the votes base? The votes base. I will not put a max age on it. I will put probably a measure of senility, but I will not put a max age on it. Listen, I know some old people who might be, I will answer you just now, Krimak. I know some old people. Yes, I know the DNC ones too, because they like chaining up people. But I know some old people who might be in their 80s, 90s, who would look at life more seriously because they are worried about their grandchildren, while their grandchildren aren't even worried about themselves. Listen, if you have a grandchild at 18, and a grandparent at 85 who has their senses about them, who would you trust more to make some of their life decisions? Listen, I know I might sound like a real old-time conservative with some of these things, but it's coming from literal logic to me, from when I look at things and look at just how it works. If some of these young people let their grandparents choose their relationships for them, go back to some of the arranged marriages of old, some of their relationships might last longer. They make decisions that they prefer. Here's the thing. My mother right now is a grandmother. My father right now is a grandfather. Good night, soon to be honorable. Nice name. Both are grandparents. And when I look at the decisions they make, when I look at where their focus is, when I look at where their focus is, their focus really and truly is kind of about making life best for the generations under them. Their focus isn't that much on their selfish needs. You've actually, Krimak, don't worry in the afterlife. You could jump in the life. Don't worry in the afterlife. You could jump in and we could have a discussion. A lot of older people still voting party and race. I agree with you. That is true. But a lot of younger people are doing the same thing. Listen, when I'm on Facebook, and something I like to do, I like to go and sneak into some of those party groups and see what the discussions are. And listen, it's not the old people. It is not the old people. I have discussions on politics on a regular basis. It's not the old people. The voting on race and tribe has nothing to do with that. It's not a matter of age. Age doesn't create race or tribe. It does not. It cements what you already believe. And it just so happens that maybe some young people may have an open view. Yeah, it's some. But some of them don't. And many of them vote the same race and tribe as the older ones too. But that's my view. And I also think the young people should get a chance. But my view is that young people should have the ability to develop within the safety of a society, looked after by people who are not going to just make regular changes on a whim. That's not what you want. That's not how stability is made. It really isn't. There's a reason that in many countries there's a lower age limit to voting. There's a lower age limit to making certain, not just voting, to being a leader. There was a reason, for example, now this could go into a racial and gender bias side, but we could stay clear of that for a bit. But there was a reason once upon a time why voters had to own land in a place before they could vote. There was a reason for that. Who is a great world leader at the moment? I don't know. I don't know one that I would call a great world leader at the moment. I don't think there's one I'd put on a pedestal like that. Chiny Douglas, you looking for trouble. I don't know if there's one I would put on a pedestal like that. How about to sending right? Well, if they don't vote and we stop old people from voting, then who votes? People aren't voting because they're disenchanted. What is going to make them enchanted? But that's a common thing all over the world. But yes, the point I was making, there was a reason that once upon a time, in most voting countries, you had to own property in the country before you could vote. There was a reason for that. There's a reason that you had to own property. Seeing we vote on racist PNM propaganda. More Indian versus African. Who told you there are more Indians in Trinidad than Africans? That's not really true. It's not exactly separated like that. There's no one race that has the majority. Remember, there are other races, and there's a large group, a large plurality of mixed race too. So yeah, and to listen, soon to be honorable, the biggest set of Indian contractors and businesses is PNM supporters. Soon to be honorable, I would say that is untrue, and I find such allegations to be I don't want to use the word dishonest, but not to be looking at things clearly. not to be looking at things clearly. Like, listen. Go on a pro-UNC page on Facebook. Go on a UNC post that calls Rowley, Bobby Head, don't have a plan, Keith, stupidity, duncy head kind of thing. Go on that. Look, disingenuous was the actual word I was looking for. And look at the surnames. Let's be honest with ourselves. If we want to make certain things change, if we want to have change, we have to be honest about things. Go look at the surnames and then come back to me and tell me if you'd make that statement in all honesty. Like, let's be real about this. Let's be real about this. Look at the board. Look at the senior members of the UNC and look at them for the last 30 years. Like, I don't understand why we even need to pretend like this isn't a thing. It's not an insult necessarily. It's just a fact. It is what Trinidad is. It is the reality of how Trinidad is. And here's the reason why, although there may be a large number of Indians in Trinidad and Tobago, it still doesn't allow the UNC to just keep ruling in perpetuity. Because many of the Indo-Trinidadians are concentrated in fewer constituencies. Listen, if all of the Indo-Trinidadians vote for one party and they all move to Siparia, their one party is going to win Siparia by 300,000 votes, but they would only win Siparia. And our country isn't ruled by majority. Our country is ruled by seats. So the majority talk doesn't actually fit in there. But to pretend like there isn't a racial element to all of this is dishonest. Now, here's the thing, and I know some UNC supporters won't like this and some may call me a PNM for it, but here's the reality. What are your thoughts about proportional representation? I like it, Massimo. I like it. I like it more than our present context, our present system. The reality is the People's National Movement is not as similarly aligned on race. Like, I don't understand why we pretend these things aren't the way they are. I posted a video where Anil Roberts said the power brokers Imbert Alrawi Sinanan aren't black. Correct. That is true. They aren't black. The PNM is not aligned on race. I always make this point. The PNM and the UNC are fighting on two different playing fields. I see you may not have found all of my previous lives. I always make this point. The PNM, to me, this is as I see it, the PNM fights on the class level. So regularly in the PNM, I've heard this conversation from some PNM supporters. They talk about the UNC as low class people. And when the UNC came into power, and if you see how them low class, I heard this from some PNM people. And if you see how them low class people treat all the government buildings there, boy, when them come in there with a low class self, there is a class base. And if you are Afro-Trinidadian and you are familiar with, go read, what was this book? Not The Wooing of Beppo Tate, one of those other familiar Trinidad local books. It tells a real true story about that kind of class battle. What was the name of that book? It always Crick Crack Monkey, was it that? No, not Animal Farmer, local book, Crick Crack Monkey, I believe. Crick Crack Monkey, where the young girl moves from her rural community to town with her aunt, and her aunt is of a more upper class thing, and she's trying to get the girl to behave in that manner, and etc, 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 etc. And if you read through the PNM history, you could kind of see that was where the PNM came through, where they glorified education, people who attained Green Day, no, not Green Days by the River, I think. Green Days, I think that's another book. But, yeah, if you read through the history, the Grande, it was Green Days by the River? It was? I thought that was about the guy who met the girl and he liked her. No, anyway, whatever, whichever book it was, that's the one I'm talking about. And if you read through the history of the PNM, about the PNM Women's Arm, and you look into the Women's Arm and some of what they protested about and how they spoke, yeah, it had that kind of feeling with it, where, you know, and if you are part of the Afro-Trinidadian community, you would understand that class does exist within the community. There's that colorism and classism within that Caribbean full black community, within the black community, all black Afro descendants, and there's that heavy class and color vibe. And the PNM, I think, was founded with some of that in the roots. So if you look at the PNM and you try to look at the PNM and evaluate them based on race, like you would the UNC, you would be out of place. That won't work. That won't work. Can we really compare UNC to PNM? PNM is in power for 45 years. UNC basically in power for 5. That is not true. The UNC did not get power for 5 years. The UNC had many different opportunities, and in nearly every single opportunity they had, they showed that they could not handle the thieving aspect. The thieving aspect of their party. Now, here's the thing. Here's the dilemma I find myself in local politics. Because I consider the PNM more of a classist party. The PNM has a real lean towards old money. If the PNM is in power, if you have old money, if my daddy's daddy was rich back in the 60s and 50s, I would have loved the PNM. Old money and the PNM works together. It's like, remember Imbert? I made a contemplation, and I spoke about this in a live where Imbert spoke about he really hopes that the young entrepreneurs in this country aren't looking to just import expensive toys at a markup and sell it back locally. He really hopes that's not what the young entrepreneurs in this country is hoping to. That's not, I mean, if you're a young entrepreneur, you should be innovating and create an okay, grand, beautiful. I like that. Yeah, as a young entrepreneur, you should be. But all the old entrepreneurs are doing just that same thing, and they're making money, and the PNM seems to be fine with it. As long as you have that old money, the PNM is all well and fine with you. Al-Rawi, Imbert, look at the names. Old money. But the dilemma I find myself in is that I don't like this old money party that wants to keep everything locked into they remove crafts and technical skills teaching from the school system. I'm confused by people. And I don't want to vote for this group of people that wants things to be locked into the status quo. That I don't like that. I don't want to. But then the other option is a group of people that don't seem locked into the status quo. They don't seem like they favor old money. They just seem like they favor money in general. Whenever this other party comes in, so when this party comes in, when the PNM comes in, the PNM quickly raises a tax on online purchases. The PNM clamps down on importation of vehicles, so you can't get. I remember when in the years of the partnership government, all kind of independent people were opening their own businesses, their own import businesses, importing cars, and you could get a car in Trinidad for 40-something thousand from an independent importer. Then all of a sudden the PNM comes in power, and that's horrible for the economy. That's horrible for the environment. We know we must stop this. So then only Ansa McCall could bring in cars. Of course. Yeah, right. Only the biggest of companies could bring in cars. I hate that. I don't like that. But then the UNC comes in, and I start to see the coffers are being hopped up and towed away by the grop load. These people bring in a group of bandits. Listen, McCandle Dagger, who was the head of NJAC, they came into the partnership to give it that Afro. They came in to give it Afro credence. Let's be honest, what that was about. let's be honest what that was about. Mukandal Daga and the National Joint Action Committee, they had been in Trinidad politics for a long time. If you went to UWI, I believe Daga Auditorium was named after him. And in the first year, I believe, of the partnership, he came out with a statement in the public. He came out with a statement saying that he has never seen such thieving in his life. He came out with that statement. Then within a month's time, he was an ambassador to somewhere outside of Trinidad. They flew him out there, filled his mouth with whatever they filled his mouth with. He made no statements after that, and that was that after. All of a sudden, there was no corruption after that. He made no statements on that. But listen, I knew some people in and around this partnership government. The allegations of monetary impropriety were not false. They were not false. I say regularly, I work around the contracting industry. Yeah. Money pass like water. Cash flow like water. So that's the dilemma I find myself in. We have a classist party on this side that wants to lock things down for Imbert and his ilk, while we have a party on this side that isn't classist, and they would open up the economy. We all can go and work, but bear in mind the treasury very likely would be empty by the time they're finished, because they have no control on their thieving proclivities. Who am I to choose? And I see people with 3-letter other statements inside of the chat. Listen, I'm sorry, the PEP just does not stand that test. They just don't. They just don't. And I don't want to get into that, but I think if you're looking at this with an honest view, you look at the PEP and you see, have you ever or anyone tried to silence you? I don't think anyone has tried to silence me. I don't like the tone of that. No, I don't. I'm not staying I'm not staying that much for people to try and silence me. But listen, on one of the first videos I made on TikTok was relating to the PEP, and people think you have a short memory, because many people inside of Trinidad seem to have a short memory. The people inside of the People's Empowerment Party did not now jump into the political fray. I do not like to choose people that seem like the only reason they are independent there is because the desired group they have didn't want them. There is someone right now in the UNC, a senator, who is screaming constantly and saying some of the most nasty things on a regular, who asked to be a PNM candidate just the other day. And then when the PNM refused him, he went over to the UNC and like, oh gosh, come on. And these reasons, you all like to call names. I notice you all like to call names. You think I forgot the name? I did not forget the name. But these things are why I so regularly say that I think the solution to politics doesn't lie in voting in and out another party. The solution to politics lies in our culture. The solution to politics lies in us speaking about things like this. The solution to politics lies in us understanding how we want our country to be developed, and it does not have to even have anything to do with who we vote for. The idea I would like is that these politicians should have even less impact on our everyday lives, because these people evidently do not make good decisions when they have control over other people's lives. It's not a matter of need new blood. I do not want new blood to have control over my life. I want none of that blood to have control over my life. How about no? How about you do not have that control over my life? How about you dial back the control of the government, leave them to bat in very small specific corners. That way we don't have to have a $50-something billion budget We don't need a 50-something billion dollar budget. We just need the government to take care of what the government has to take care of. Here's what. We don't need even that big central government. Let's have more local governance taking care of the things like the roads and the drains, etc. And then we'd have private companies doing what private companies do best, provide services and goods. How about that? The problem is the people. The problem is the people, and the problem is the people have created a system that kind of fits people into a certain wrong. Listen, you could change who you want to change. If someone ends up inside as a minister of education, you can only do as a minister of education what the system has allowed the minister of education to do. And then the system constrains what the minister of education even can do, because you'd have a lot of people that you can't fire, you can't change, you have no control over their portfolios, and then you have to keep them happy inside of your job. It's not just like if you get into prime minister, and I'm sure, listen, I'm not of the view that every politician that ever entered politics, all of them always enter with selfish intentions. I'm not of that view. I'm sure there are some people who enter there and they have good intentions. They may even have the best of intentions, but then they reach there and they understand that the way the system is created, the way it is engineered that you are to do to the system what the system allows you to do. That's how it's created. And new blood isn't just going to change that. Unless the new blood gets in there and says, hey, let's squash this system and create something with a lot less power for politicians to have over the people. And the strange thing is, especially with the PNM government, nearly every suggestion they make always involves giving politicians more power. I don't like it. I just don't like it. All right. That's all I have for now for you folks over on Instagram and on YouTube. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for the next one. I will see you then at 9:30. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained, and I'll be on TikTok for a little while longer having a little discussion there. If you feel so obliged, come over and join. If not, see you tomorrow.